Welcome to Still a Part of Us. We are excited once again to talk to Karen. Oh man, I cannot recommend you listening to her birth episode of Kori. Just it is so good, and so grateful that I am a witness to it. I just think it's so cool what Kori's little life brought to is bringing to you, Karen, every single day. So welcome back again to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
Now tell us a little bit about what happened, just in a nutshell of like what happened and how long ago it was that Corey was born.
Yeah, so as of this recording, Kori was born 6 months ago at around 23 weeks gestation. And it was quite the experience because
Yeah.
she was supposed to be delivered via a D&E. And instead, she decided she would be delivered naturally. And
Yes.
so,
Very
so
naturally. I really cannot recommend that birth episode enough. It was astounding. Like I was just my mouth was open the entire time. I was like, "What?"
yes, she's our little miracle.
Yeah. Just please listen to it. It's so good. So Karen, I realize it's been just 6 months. It is not very long, and for you to reach out, I just want to once again say thank you because a lot of this is a really hard time. It's
Yeah.
the grief is new and the grief is fresh, and I like to ask that question. How has that looked for you, especially at the very beginning when you left the hospital without your daughter? What did that look like for you and Josh and your kids? How did you navigate those first few like, the first month or so?
Yeah. It was challenging. It was a lot of navigating unknowns and just trying to get through the day. If I'm being honest, I barely left the bed
Yeah.
for a while. And I binged content on YouTube and listening to other lost moms stories and how they navigated things, and that's why, it's been 6 months for me, but I remember how lonely it felt, especially in those early days, and the comfort I got from hearing other women's stories. And so it was a no brainer if I could tell Corey's story and also share that just 6 months later, I can sit through and tell her story to give hope to those mamas that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
This sucks, and none of us want to be here,
Yeah.
but we're resilient and we'll be okay. And so some of the things that I did right after I got out the bed,
Yeah.
that's important because,
Yes.
um, it's funny. I actually was watching a, it was let's say I was watching a podcast. I don't know what else to call it. It was like an interview on
Yeah.
YouTube,
Yeah.
and it was about disappointment and expectation. And the speaker said, I know you're hurting because you lost your baby. And I know you just want to let the depression and the sadness overwhelm you and you want to go with it, but it's not your time. So get up. And I'm watching this on my phone thinking, wow, how is he speaking directly to my
Mhm. Mhm.
situation? And but it continued and he kept saying, get out of the bed, get up. And it was literally as if he were speaking to me
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
at this point I was one with the sheets.
Yeah.
I might as well have been the sheet. And he's like, go wash your face.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that made me get out of the bed because I felt like it was God speaking to me and saying, let's start this process. Like let's get up and start moving. And a few things that were and have been extremely helpful. I'm a reader, and so I purchased books. The
Mm.
hospital gave me
Mhm.
books. My friends sent in books, but there are so many great books out there on navigating grief. There is a devotional called Loved Baby, and it is daily devotions talking about that. There's a book about grieving the child I never knew. And
Mm,
it really not only helped me put language to what I was
mm,
going through, it gave me language to share what I was going through. Because it's so easy when people say, "How are you?" to say, "I'm fine, I'm okay." And I had learned to say, "I am not okay.
yeah.
I am sad. I am frustrated. I'm angry." To be okay with even sharing my raw emotions.
Yeah.
And that helped me navigate some of those things. Another thing we did was found a therapist
Mm,
who specialized in grief and maternal mental health.
that is
And
awesome.
so, yes, and I could not have this conversation with you today if it weren't for the work that I've been doing with Dr. Beth. She is incredible. Um, she helps me to categorize and really think about what's happening
Yeah.
and what I'm feeling. And I'll give you an example. She said to me early on that think of grief being a button inside of a box with a ball bouncing in it.
Yes.
And the ball hits the button all the time because the box is small. And so we feel the manifestations of of grief, whether you're sad or you cry or,
Yep.
And she said, with time, the box gets bigger.
Mhm.
It's not that the grief goes away, the button is still in the box, but the ball hits it less frequent
Yeah.
because now there's more space.
Yeah.
And that was so encouraging for me. And it's been true that now I can string together more days where I don't cry about losing Kori than I could have five
Yeah.
months ago.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful visual because you don't at those early times when you're like, I just feel like yes, it feels like somebody's pushing your buttons and you're gonna
Uh-huh.
cry
Uh-huh.
all the time, and that's basically what's happening. Like anything, like people can just ask a very innocent question and you get angry at them or you break down into tears. But yes,
Yeah.
your capacity, the box's capacity, your capacity to grow and learn and heck, even like you said, get off the sheets,
Yeah.
get up. Those
Yeah.
steps make that box more resilient and able
Yeah.
to get bigger and as your life goes on.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Really, really like that a lot. And I also want to just one more. I just want to point out that the bit of advice that you said of getting up,
Hmm.
that is huge. Like
Yeah.
there's something to be said about just sometimes making an action of movement
Mhm.
that because that really is so hard in those early days just to feel like I have nothing to live for. Like
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
don't want to do anything. So just that I love the just movement sometimes. Just get up and
Hmm.
go wash your face like you said and make a meal or go for a walk. There's just those little actions.
Yes.
Really just
Or
sometimes you need a little bit of a dopamine hit or a check mark that you can say I did something today.
absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I found was making my bed made it
Ooh.
less tempting to get back in it. It didn't
Yes.
mean I wouldn't lay on the couch,
Yeah,
but
no, no, no.
at least I changed
Yeah,
rooms, right?
yes. Yeah.
Or you made the point about going for a walk. There was one day where my husband Josh said, "Let's just go for a walk," and this was before we delivered Kori. So the week between
Oh,
finding
yes.
out she no longer had a heartbeat and delivering her, and there were baby butterflies everywhere. And I just remembered this. They followed us
What?
as we walked, and it was a I love butterflies, but I always specifically look for butterflies that have circles on them. It's a brown
Oh,
butterfly with circles,
uh-huh.
and those were the types of butterflies that were around us. So I noticed the butterfly right away initially because that's
What you look
the one I
yeah.
tend to look for, and there were hundreds of baby butterflies, and I thought clearly it must be they must grow here. They must live here, like they hatch here. I don't know what happens, but they just followed us as we walked, and we thought,
Hmm,
this is Kori letting us know that she's free and she's still with us and she's
yeah,
flying with us.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love seeing yes, I love little signs like that. Looking for
Mhm.
those on a regular basis, so
Yeah.
when you, so you have a couple of you have a blended family and you have,
Mhm.
2 littles that were very young. I mean,
Yeah.
can you tell me how you guys have navigated that conversation
Mhm.
and then also just helping them understand that is it's always a tricky thing to help kids understand death when they're
Mhm.
so unfamiliar with what that concept may be.
Mhm.
But how did that look
Yeah.
for your kiddos?
So they had a introduction to death in losing their grandmother a
Oh,
couple of
yes.
years prior.
Mhm.
So they understood, and we had already taught them the idea of heaven and that, when people leave the earth, that we'll see them again and they're
Mhm.
still with us. So we had started having those types of conversations already. And when we told them that Corey had passed, it was really hard because our daughter really wanted a little sister,
Yes.
and she was so excited. And even before for before we even got pregnant with Corey, a year prior, she would always ask me, when are we going to have a baby? And I would say, I don't know, honey. And she'd go, well, can't you just take a test?
Mhm.
She associates that,
Yes.
thank goodness that she thinks that the way you get pregnant is by taking a test. Hallelujah. We'll take
Yes.
that.
We right
Uh,
now, that's what we're gonna do.
yes. And so she'd always say, when are you going to take a test? When are you going to take a test? And I would say to her, after we go to Mexico. So we were planning a wedding celebration in Mexico in 2024 May. So I said, after is when we'll take a test. And she said, okay. So she stopped asking because she had, something to think about.
Yeah, yes.
And so when we did have to break the news, it was really hard and comical at the same time because the youngest one, he was 4.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's
No.
happening, right? And so at the same time, we're sitting with the kids, and we said, we used to refer to Corey's timing for delivery around when she was ready. That's how
Mm.
they thought about
Yes,
it,
that's right.
because they would say, we wish she were here already, and we'd say, well, she's not ready yet. She still has to grow,
Mhm.
and so we would use that language. And so the way we told them that she passed was to say, she came too early and she wasn't ready yet. And that's why she passed. And so our daughter is wailing and just screaming and crying, and our hearts are breaking.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, you have the 4-year-old that's like, he literally says, so, can I have a snacky snack?
Yes. The
And,
juxtaposition of the understanding of kids. "What's going
oh,
on over there? I need a snack."
I need a snack. And so he's just like, okay. Um, but even now, it still comes down.
Mhm.
We had said to them, so we would tell them that when it was cold out is when she would be here.
Mhm.
And so the kids associated winter
Mhm.
with Corey's arrival.
Yeah.
So when winter came around and she wasn't
Oh.
here,
Oh.
it was devastating because they kept referencing she was supposed to be here.
Oh.
It's cold now. And then the holidays came.
Oh.
And yeah, so it was, and it still is a journey. And now it's less tearful for them, but they always say, we used to call her Bean, and they'd say, I wish Bean was here. I
Yeah.
miss Bean. And, but we have around our home things that include her in
Mhm.
our life
Mhm.
and help us remember her too. And so I think that's some of what inspires some of their conversation as well.
Yeah, completely. So do they have tell me about what you've done, or things that you have around the home.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that the kids have specifically that is theirs that reminds them of their little
Hmm.
bean?
Yes. So the kids have books
Mhm.
that we read, and we we call it the Bean books. So they're like, I want to read about Bean,
Oh,
and
cute.
so for example, there's a book called There Was a Baby, and it talks about the baby was in the tummy and a part of our family, but they're not here anymore. And so it's beautiful illustrations and to help tell that story. And one of the things that my therapist recommended was being okay with incorporating Kori into our home and
Mhm.
into our even day-to-day conversation,
Yeah.
because she is a part of our family.
Yep.
And because one of the fears that I had, especially as time went on after those first few weeks, the meal train ends
Mhm.
and the family goes back to their
Their
homes
homes.
when they flew in to visit, and life for everyone else moves on, but
Yeah.
you're still in pain. And there, I have the feeling of she'll be forgotten.
Yes.
And that was scary for me to think that someday we wouldn't think about our girl. And that's where she said, but she doesn't have to be forgotten. She's a part of your family. And so we have a digital picture frame.
Mhm.
And I added pictures of me being pregnant
Oh,
on
good.
the frame. So even the other day, I came downstairs in the morning, and the first thing I saw was, a picture of my belly,
Yeah.
and it made me smile and think about her. Um, we Josh got me it's a weight, and I have it right here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's her sonogram inside
Oh,
of the
cool.
glass.
I can see it,
Can you
yes.
see that?
Yeah, it's a
And
heart-shaped glass, and it's, like, etched on the inside. That's really cool. If you get a
mhm.
chance, you can go to the YouTube video and hopefully see that. It's really pretty.
Yeah, and so I have that. I keep it next to our bed, and
Mhm.
so, we see it all the time. And there is a little trinket of a baby holding a star. I have it here too. I can show you. It's like a little girl, baby butter, with
Oh, yeah,
wings.
with the wings and everything.
That.
That's so sweet. So
Mhm.
pretty, just really pretty.
And it's beautiful, right? And so we have that in our living room. So where we have pictures of the kids, we have Corey there. So wherever there is anything to do with our family or
Yes.
images, we include her there as well.
Yeah, it's that I mean, that's one of the reasons why we call the podcast Still a Part of Us because they are
Hmm.
still very much a part of your family, and I
Absolutely.
love how you do that, that you've also incorporated her in everything, like,
Yeah.
just yep,
Yeah.
very
And
much a
even
part.
her room, we never got around to decorating her
Mhm,
room
mhm.
because it was still early on and we hadn't moved yet. So we moved here. Our house was finished after she was delivered.
Oh, I see,
So the
okay.
whole point was we started the process once we found out we were pregnant, but construction had to happen.
Mhm,
And the goal was to have the house ready before we delivered her
yes.
um, in December. And so her room is still there, and we call it Bean's room. And so even if we're looking for something, I'm like, it's in Bean's closet,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just think I it's just another part of the family, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. I like to ask questions about, like, your relationship, with your
Hmm.
husband, and,
Sure.
just because sometimes that looks just so different. It has varied for a lot of people as we've talked to them, and how have you guys supported each other through this process? And I know that you have mentioned that you guys found a therapist, and are you guys going together, or are you doing separate, or is it just you? And because once again, some people do couples counseling because this is something that is really hard to navigate sometimes. So,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
so yeah,
So,
tell me a little bit about your how you guys are handling your grief.
mm, so we did counseling separately
Mm-hmm.
because we thought that that's what we needed at the time.
Oh,
There was a lot happening in navigating. So there was losing Kori and navigating that, but there were other things to that went with it, right? So I'll give you an example. For me, being a bonus mom, so being
mhm.
with a man who had children,
Yeah.
and so there was a another level of grief that I had of, you know, I couldn't give him a child in
Oh,
our marriage. And so it
yeah.
felt a little like I had failed us in our plan that I had to work through. And it's not true, but
Yes.
the brain does weird
It
things.
does. And I mean, yes, there's kind of stigma around, like,
Yeah.
you're meant to bear children, that type of
Yes.
thing. And it weighs on you. Like, I mean, even if there's no expectation from your husband at all, it's
Yeah.
society that kind of has that, it's putting it on you. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we actually even struggled a little bit in the beginning in finding how to support one another
Mm,
because we all grieve differently, which I learned
yeah.
during that time. Some of us, like me, want to lay on the couch and be still or lay in the bed and just kind of be. And some people prefer to be active, they
Yes.
need to go do something. And so I think it was the day after we lost Corey, Josh was washing his car. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? This is the day to wash cars. And um and this is why I really appreciated the books that I read because once I realized like that is a part of his grieving process.
Yes.
He needs to do something
Yes.
with his hands
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of not think about what's happening
Yeah.
where I just want to sulk in it and
Mm-hmm.
just, not think of anything else besides what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So, because we were approaching it a little differently, we needed to have our session separate, but he had his own
Mm-hmm.
um, therapist and I mine. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it was I remember those early that first couple of months where I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, yeah, I just
Yeah.
kept asking. I was like, "Lee, what are you doing? Like, why are you like often?" And that has come up so often where a lot of the dads feel like there's almost an energy that they need to burn off. I don't know how to
Yes.
explain it,
Yes.
but they need to feel useful, um
Yeah.
and this is such a situation where you feel so helpless. Like
Yes.
there's
Yes.
like there's no sense of control. And so for them to just try and do something, I was like, "Oh, okay, I
Yes.
get it now." Like,
Right? It makes sense because we're physically navigating also the delivery and
yes.
our bodies are doing things and eh, they're doing their best and just trying to be there for us, but also feeling that sense of helplessness
Mhm.
and what do I do? And so washing the cars felt like the thing at the
Yeah, well,
time.
and I was going to say, oh, he's taking care, right? Like he is
Hmm.
taking care of something that he can do, because
Yeah.
that's one thing. I swear my husband, um he's a cook, he's a chef,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, I
Oh,
was
that's
like, I
amazing.
know, it's so great, but I was like, even though he didn't really sort of feel like cooking or anything those first few days, like, after a while, he just found he fell into that very quickly because it was something that he could do. Like,
Yeah.
he was able to take care that way, and
Yeah.
so just interesting how people, um,
Yeah.
grieve differently.
It is. And I remember even the first time after we delivered Corey, and the first time I heard the kids, you know, call him daddy, and I cried
Oh, yeah.
because my girl will never get to call him daddy, right? And so, so many things where um, you start to compare the life that will not happen,
Yeah.
or I dreamt of seeing Josh with three kids running around. He's the
Yeah.
fun parent,
Yeah.
by the way. Like, I do my best,
Yeah.
but I'm the one that's like, let's read,
Yeah.
let's go on a, let's go for a walk, let's go explore.
Yeah.
And Josh is like, let's roll around
Yep.
in the dirt. Um, and and so I looked forward to those things. So even now, when we play with the kids and we do things, we just think about like, man, there was supposed to be a third one
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the processing of the grief, that is one thing I've never realized because you have that's the tricky thing about losing a baby because you have in your mind, once you find out you're pregnant,
Yeah.
you've planned this life for them. I mean, like
Oh yes.
you just like look way forward and you're just like, this is the way it's going to be for them. This is going to be so, our family looks
Yeah.
different now. It's going to be so fun. And then
Mhm.
after they don't come home with you, you realize that you're like, you have to undo all of that mental
Yes.
imagery and plans that you had. And that is hard. That's the part of the processing that really sucks, I think, where you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, I don't get to celebrate Christmas with you. And I don't, you know,
Hmm.
we're not going to have a family vacation with you.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. And I think it robs us of joy in the future, and that
yeah,
in I don't think I will ever in a future pregnancy. I pray I have a future pregnancy, but I don't think I will dream in the way that I did with
yeah,
Corey. I think I will be on pins and needles waiting for the other shoe to drop
yeah,
until the day
yep,
that that child comes into this world. And so it's another thing to that I'm just trying to work through.
yeah.
But no.
That is, so we've had a son after our
Mhm.
loss, and I'll just tell you right now, I felt like I was holding my breath the entire time I was pregnant, and it
Yeah.
was, yeah, because you're like, I'm gonna get disappointed, so you just kind of push back a little bit, like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna get attached to this baby, but then you realize you want to get attached to this baby because
Mhm.
regardless, they're
Mhm.
still a part of who you are and
Yep.
part of your family. So,
Yeah.
um, Karen, I like to ask this question because I feel like this is something that people search out for.
Sure.
What are some things that people said and did that really were super helpful? And I know that you've alluded to a bunch of them. I mean, you've already talked about
Mhm.
the meal train that
Yes.
your husband's manager set up, and
Yes.
people that came into town, and your
Mhm.
church community that really just has surrounded you with great love and
Yeah.
but are there any other things that really stood out to you that you want to call out and maybe give somebody a shout out that was especially helpful
Yeah.
to you and your
No,
family?
for sure. You've what you just shared, they were so important. I mean, the meal train, and I
Mm.
had mentioned before, I hadn't heard of a meal train until we were the beneficiaries of
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And Josh's manager, Jackson, and his wife, Sophia, they set that up for us.
Yeah.
And the last thing on my mind was what were we going to eat
Mhm.
anyway?
Yeah.
And so I think that even if you are not physically near someone who's going through something, being able to help them in that way is important. Or I would like to say people thought about what we needed that we didn't know we needed.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I received a package that was like fuzzy slippers and a blanket and a book, right? And so, or there was another package of soup and cookies. And so we got all kinds of treats and things that, especially with having children, came in handy because they needed to eat too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
They do.
that was amazing. And some people, they just prayed for us,
Yeah.
and they called or texted and shared that they were thinking about us, and that was helpful. I would say to anyone that's a part of a village or a support
Mhm.
system, keep calling anyway.
Yes.
Even if the person doesn't want to speak. I so many times I heard, I didn't want to bother you. And I would say, actually, talking is helpful because makes me, it gives me something to do
Yeah.
and kind of takes my mind off of what I'm, thinking about my grief.
Yeah.
And so it was helpful that my friends and family, even if I didn't respond, they kept texting anyway, just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I love you and I'm
Mhm.
here for you. That meant the world to us.
Yeah. It really does because you don't if you're the person sending it, if it does feel kinda like, "Oh, they're ghosting me," or, like, they're just not
Yeah.
responding back, but really, like, you don't have the wherewithal to, like, text back sometimes. You
No.
just do not have a brain, to, like,
Hmm.
put 2 words together sometimes, but just knowing somebody is thinking about you, that's praying for you, that's,
Yeah.
got you in their thoughts, it's really so nice. It's so comforting. It's so comforting.
Hmm.
So,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah. And Josh and I were very fortunate that both of our companies had um, plans that allowed us to be out of work.
Oh,
So,
good.
for example, Josh was out for a month from
Oh.
work, and
Oh my
that's
gosh. That net
unheard of.
that's unheard of. That's
Yep.
amazing.
And his team and his company was like, we're going to figure this out for you. You stay home, you take care of Karen, and we've got you on this end. And so they did that. I was on leave for 4.5 months,
Good.
and it was just having that support and the ability to be home and grieve. And I realized that everyone doesn't have that
Yeah.
opportunity, but the way that our colleagues even showed up for us in this
Yes.
difficult time was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I was shocked at like you said, your company, your colleagues are all across the country, and just
Yeah.
for them to be sending things to make sure that you're doing okay, I think is so cool.
Yeah.
And your
Mhm.
yeah, your husband's company, I just am like, wow, you really have been so blessed in that way of just
Where,
having that support and the
mhm,
ability to do that. Um,
yeah.
Karen, I have really appreciated chatting with you. You've lent a lot of just wonderful words of advice, and also just even talking about your experience just helps other people not feel so alone. Honestly,
Yeah, thank
that is
you.
immeasurable. Actually, we chatted before we started, and you said that you had written a letter to Kori.
Yes,
And would you mind reading that as we close today and say your words to her directly?
sure.
And we'd love to hear that.
Happy to. So this was written on September 13th, 2024. Dear Kori, a week ago, I thought that was the worst day of my life. It was the day I was told you no longer had a heartbeat. Today, as I sit with your body, I think it wins as the new worst day ever because I have to leave you here and go home. Losing you is so hard to wrap my mind around, and it hurts so much. I miss you. I miss feeling you move in my body. I miss the memories we don't get to make. I miss the life I planned with you in. You, my girl, I've prayed for before I had any business thinking about babies. I always wanted a daughter that I'd name Kori. And as time went on, the story of your name would continue to evolve. When I lost my mom, your grandmother, Rose, I decided my daughter's name would be Kori Rose. We didn't have a last name yet because I was single, so no potential daddies in sight. Then in 2020, I met your daddy, Josh, and I thought maybe your name was complete. Then in 2022, he lost his mother, and your name became Kori Rose Joy. There are no words that I can use to accurately describe how much I love you. You are my dream come true. You are the best thing to ever happen to me. Thank you, Kori. We only had 23 weeks together, but your impact on my life is immeasurable. I hope you know how much I love you and how bad I wanted you. I will never be the same, and I promise your life will not have been in vain. I hope you're with your grandmothers in heaven, and they can tell you all about me and your dad. I also hope you come to visit with me and let me know it's you. Our story doesn't end here. I truly believe that. Thank you for making me a mommy. Thank you for coming into this world on your own terms without surgery. And thank you for being my angel. I love you, sweet girl. Mommy loves you so much. Love, Mom.
Karen, thank you. That was so beautiful. So beautiful. And I
Thank
want to
you.
say thank you so much for coming on and sharing Kori with us. And yeah, I feel like so privileged to have been here. So thank you
Thank
again.
you. I appreciate you.